The alarm on my dashboard screamed before I even understood what it meant. Red lights filled the cockpit, and my ship shook so hard that my teeth rattled. I gripped the controls, trying to keep my freighter steady as something unseen pulled me off my planned route. My name is Ethan Cole, and until that moment, my life had been simple. I flew cargo between the outer colonies, delivered supplies, avoided trouble, and went home to a quiet apartment with nothing waiting for me except silence. That night, the silence ended. A signal had locked onto my navigation system, dragging my ship toward a patch of space that wasn't on any chart. I tried to cut the connection, but the controls refused to respond. My ship groaned as invisible force pulled it faster and faster toward a field of wreckage glowing faintly under the light of a distant sun. Metal debris floated everywhere, twisted and burned, remains of something that used to be much larger than my small freighter. I did not have time to think. My ship crashed through a cloud of broken hull fragments, alarms shrieking, sparks flying from my control panel. I braced myself as my vessel collided with a floating chunk of debris, sending me spinning before the emergency thrusters finally caught and slowed my fall. When everything stopped shaking, I sat there for a moment, breathing hard, staring at the destruction around me through my cracked windshield. Whatever ship had been here before me, it did not survive whatever attacked it. I checked my systems. Oxygen was fine. Structural integrity was low but holding. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the comm system, trying to find the source of the distress signal that had pulled me here in the first place. It repeated over and over, faint and broken, a language my translator struggled to process. I caught only fragments. Help. Danger. Alive. Someone was out there. I could have turned back. Any sane person would have turned back. Colony law did not require me to investigate unknown wreckage in unclaimed space, especially wreckage that looked like the result of an attack. But something about that broken voice repeating through static made my chest tighten. I grabbed my emergency suit, sealed my helmet, and opened the airlock before I could talk myself out of it. Outside, the wreckage stretched farther than I expected, silent and cold, lit only by starlight. I used my thruster pack to move between broken pieces of hull, following the signal that grew stronger the closer I got. Eventually, I found it. A small escape pod, dented and scorched, wedged between two larger pieces of debris. Lights blinked weakly along its side, and through a narrow window, I saw movement. Someone was alive in there. I worked quickly, using tools from my suit to pry open the pod's emergency hatch. The metal groaned in protest, but it finally gave way, and I pulled myself inside. That was the moment I saw her for the first time. She looked nothing like anyone I had ever met, yet somehow, her fear was the most human thing I had ever seen. Her skin held a faint blue tint under the emergency lights, her eyes wide and violet, filled with exhaustion and terror. She wore torn robes, clearly meant for someone of importance, though damaged beyond recognition. She flinched away from me, pressing herself into the corner of the pod, speaking rapidly in a language I did not understand. My translator device crackled weakly, picking up only pieces. "Stay away. Please. Not again." I raised my hands slowly, showing her I meant no harm. My voice came out calm, steady, though my heart pounded inside my chest. I do not know if she understood my words, but something about my tone made her stop retreating. She stared at me for a long moment, studying my face as though trying to decide if I was another threat or something else entirely. Then, she said something my translator finally captured clearly. "You are not one of them." I shook my head. "No," I told her, "I am not." Her shoulders sagged slightly, and for a moment, exhaustion took over fear. She was injured. I could see that now, a wound along her arm that had been hastily wrapped with torn fabric. Whatever happened to her ship, she had barely escaped with her life. I did not know who she was yet. I did not know she carried royal blood from a species entirely unknown to Earth, that her presence here would change the course of my life forever. All I knew in that moment was that someone needed help, and I was the only one who could give it. I helped her out of the pod, careful not to worsen her injury, and guided her back toward my ship. She moved slowly, weak from blood loss and shock, leaning against me more than once as we crossed the debris field. I kept scanning the wreckage around us, an uneasy feeling growing in my chest. Something about this destruction did not look accidental. The burn patterns along the hull fragments told a story of deliberate attack, not a simple malfunction. Whoever did this might still be out there. We reached my ship, and I sealed the airlock behind us the moment we were both inside. I removed my helmet, and she did the same with the strange breathing device she wore, revealing more of her features. Despite her exhaustion, there was an unmistakable dignity in the way she held herself, even injured and afraid. "I am Velthara," she said quietly, her translator device finally syncing properly with mine. "Of the Zarine Dominion." I told her my name, and she repeated it carefully, as though testing an unfamiliar sound. "Ethan Cole." She studied me with those violet eyes, curiosity slowly replacing fear. "You saved me," she said. "Why?" I did not have a clever answer. I simply told her the truth. "Because you needed help." She looked at me as though that answer confused her more than any complicated explanation could have. Before she could respond, my ship's proximity sensors erupted into warning tones. Something was approaching fast, weapons already charging according to my scanners. I rushed to the cockpit, Velthara following despite her injury, gripping the edge of my chair as she looked over my shoulder at the display. 3 ships. Sleek, dark, unmarked. Exactly the kind of vessels that leave no trace, an answer to no one. "They found me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They will not let me live. Not after what I saw." I did not ask what she meant. There was no time. The first shot came seconds later, rocking my ship violently, sparks exploding from a damaged console near the rear. My hands moved on instinct, pulling the ship into evasive maneuvers I had only practiced during old training simulations, never actual combat. My freighter was not built for this. It had no weapons, only basic defensive shielding that was already failing under repeated fire. "I need you to hold on," I told her, gripping the controls tightly as another blast rocked the hull. She nodded, fear evident, but her composure returning slightly, some inner strength surfacing despite everything. I guided the ship through the debris field, using broken fragments of the destroyed vessel as cover, weaving between obstacles while enemy fire chased us relentlessly. My hands were slick with sweat, my mind racing through every option available. We were losing. My ship could not outrun 3 faster vessels, and it certainly could not fight back. I needed another plan, and I needed it immediately. Behind us, one of the pursuing ships opened a channel, a harsh mechanical voice crackling through my speakers. "Surrender the passenger. This does not concern you." I looked at Velthara, who stared back at me with resignation already forming in her expression, as though she expected me to make the practical choice, the choice that would keep me alive. Instead, I closed the channel without responding and pushed my ship harder toward a narrow gap between 2 massive pieces of wreckage, the only path that might slow our pursuers down. "We are not surrendering anyone," I said, more to myself than to her. The gap was tight, barely wide enough for my ship to pass through, forcing our pursuers to either follow carefully or peel away. 2 of the 3 ships hesitated, falling behind as they adjusted course. The third pushed through recklessly, firing another volley that struck my ship's rear thrusters directly. Alarms blared across every system. Emergency lights flooded the cockpit red. I felt the ship lurch violently, power flickering as critical systems failed one after another. Velthara grabbed onto the console, steadying herself as the ship spun momentarily before I regained partial control. "We are losing power," I told her, scanning the diminishing readouts. "I need to find somewhere to land, now." A moon appeared on my scanner, small but with enough atmosphere to allow for an emergency landing. I redirected every remaining bit of power toward stabilizing our descent, watching the surface grow closer through the cracked windshield. The remaining pursuing ship continued firing, though the moon's magnetic interference seemed to disrupt their targeting slightly, giving us a narrow window of survival. The landing was rough, metal screeching against rocky terrain as my ship skidded across the surface before finally grinding to a halt. Smoke filled the cockpit, and for a moment, everything went silent except for the hiss of damaged systems and our own ragged breathing. Velthara looked at me, something unreadable in her expression. "You could have surrendered me," she said quietly. "It would have been simpler for you." I unbuckled myself, checking the exterior scanners for any sign of pursuit. "Simpler is not always right," I told her. The remaining ship had not followed us down, likely assuming the crash had ended things on its own, or perhaps deciding to report back rather than risk further complications on an unfamiliar moon. Either way, we had bought ourselves time, though I knew it would not last long. "I need to check the ship's damage," I said, moving toward the rear systems. "Stay here and rest." She did not argue, exhaustion finally catching up to her as she settled back against the seat, her injured arm cradled carefully. I moved through the ship, assessing the destruction left behind by the attack. The damage was extensive. We would not be flying anywhere soon. As I worked, sealing what breaches I could and rerouting power to essential systems, I heard footsteps behind me. Velthara stood in the doorway, watching me work despite her exhaustion. "Why continue helping me?" she asked again, her voice softer this time. "You do not know who I am. You do not know what danger you have placed yourself in." I paused, looking at her directly. "Whatever you are, whoever you are, you were someone who needed help. That is enough of a reason for me." She studied me for a long moment, something shifting in her expression, though I could not yet understand what it meant. Outside, the moon's thin atmosphere howled quietly against the damaged hull, and somewhere beyond the horizon, I knew our pursuers were regrouping, preparing to finish what they started. I did not know yet how deep this situation truly ran, how far beyond a simple rescue this moment would take me. I did not know that the woman standing before me carried royal blood, that her survival mattered to an entire civilization spread across stars I had never even known existed. All I knew was that the danger was not over, and whatever came next, I intended to see her through it. The first attack had failed. I was certain it would not be the last. We spent 2 days hiding on that moon, while I repaired what I could of the ship using scavenged parts from the wreckage field above us. Velthara helped where her strength allowed, holding tools steady while I worked, translating small pieces of technology I did not recognize. During those hours, I learned more about her, though she remained careful about how much she revealed. She told me her people called themselves Zareen, a civilization spread across many star systems, governed by a royal line that had ruled for centuries. She was the third daughter of that line, though she spoke of her position with a strange heaviness, as though it brought her more danger than privilege. She did not explain who had attacked her ship, only that it involved matters within her own court, matters she was reluctant to share with someone from a species her people knew almost nothing about. On the third day, sensors detected an approaching fleet. I feared the worst, gripping a makeshift tool I had assembled from spare parts, ready to defend the ship if necessary. Velthara stopped me before I could act, her hand resting gently on my arm. "Wait," she said. "I know these markings." The fleet that descended toward the moon carried insignia unlike the ships that had pursued us before, gold and violet patterns gleaming along their hulls. Velthara relaxed slightly, though caution remained in her eyes. "These are my mother's ships," she said, "the Royal Guard." I was not entirely reassured. Just because they served her mother did not mean they would trust a stranger who had been traveling alongside their princess. Still, I had little choice but to wait as several armored figures disembarked from the largest vessel, moving toward us, though not aiming their weapons directly at us. Velthara stepped forward immediately, speaking rapidly in her native language, gesturing toward me several times during the exchange. The guards lowered their weapons slowly, though their eyes remained fixed on me with clear suspicion. One of them, taller than the rest with markings suggesting higher rank, studied me for a long moment before speaking through a translator device of his own. "You protected the princess," he said, his tone unreadable. "Why would an outsider risk himself for someone unknown to him?" I did not have a rehearsed answer, so I simply told him the truth once again, because she needed help, and I was the one who found her. The guard exchanged a glance with Velthara, who nodded slightly, confirming whatever unspoken question passed between them. Eventually, he stepped back, gesturing toward their ship. "The Queen will wish to know what happened here," he said. "You will both come with us." I had little choice but to agree. My own ship was barely functional, and remaining on this moon indefinitely was not a viable option. Velthara touched my arm gently as we walked toward their vessel, her voice quiet enough that only I could hear. "Whatever happens next," she said, "be careful. My people do not easily trust outsiders, especially ones who have witnessed things they should not have." I did not fully understand what she meant, but I nodded anyway, following her onto a ship far larger and more advanced than anything I had ever piloted myself. The interior of the vessel was unlike anything from Earth engineering, corridors lit with soft golden light, walls lined with markings that seemed to shift and glow faintly as we passed. Guards escorted us deeper into the ship, their expressions carefully neutral, though I could feel their eyes tracking my every movement. We were brought to a private chamber, sparse but comfortable, where Velthara's wound was finally treated properly by medical staff equipped with technology far beyond anything I recognized. I sat nearby, feeling entirely out of place, watching as they worked efficiently and without unnecessary conversation. Once her arm was properly healed, sealed with a strange golden light I did not understand, Velthara turned to me with visible relief. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Before I could respond, the chamber door opened and the tall guard from before returned, his expression more serious than before. "The princess will accompany her mother to discuss recent events," he said. "You, human, will remain here until further instruction." I looked toward Velthara, uncertain, but she gave me a reassuring nod before following the guard out of the chamber, leaving me alone in unfamiliar surroundings, uncertain of what fate awaited me. Hours passed. I paced the chamber, examined the strange technology embedded in the walls, and tried not to imagine every possible outcome of my situation. Eventually, the door opened again, and Velthara returned, though her expression had shifted into something more complicated than relief. "My mother wishes to meet you personally," she said. I straightened immediately. "Now?" She nodded. "There are things you should understand before that meeting happens. My people value honor above almost everything else. When someone protects another with their own body, risking everything without hesitation, it creates something we call a debt of blood. It is not something taken lightly among my people." I frowned slightly. "I did not do it for a reward," I told her. "I know," she said, a faint smile crossing her face despite the tension in the room. "That is precisely why it matters so much to them." She led me through more corridors, deeper into the ship, until we reached a grand chamber unlike anything I had seen before. Golden pillars lined the walls, intricate patterns carved into every surface, and at the far end sat a throne occupied by a figure whose presence immediately commanded attention. Empress Shaven Shireen did not look like her daughter, though the resemblance existed in subtle ways: sharper features, deeper violet eyes that seemed to study everything with calculated precision. She wore robes far more elaborate than anything Velthara had worn, golden markings tracing intricate patterns across the fabric. She regarded me silently for a long moment before speaking, her voice carrying an authority that filled the entire chamber despite its quiet tone. "You are the human who protected my daughter," she said, more statement than question. I straightened my posture, uncertain of proper protocol but unwilling to appear weak before her. "Yes," I answered simply. Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying me further. "Tell me why." I repeated the same answer I had given everyone else since this began. "Because she needed help." The Empress remained silent for several long seconds, her expression unreadable. Around the chamber, various nobles and advisors watched the exchange with clear skepticism, whispering quietly among themselves. I caught fragments of their conversation through my translator, words like outsider and unworthy repeated more than once. Finally, the Empress spoke again. "My daughter tells me you fought against overwhelming odds, sacrificing your own vessel to ensure her survival. Is this true? I glanced briefly toward Velthara, who gave a small nod of encouragement. It is true, I confirmed. The Empress rose slowly from her throne, descending the steps until she stood directly before me, closer than I expected. Her presence was overwhelming, though not entirely unkind, something calculating hidden beneath her composed exterior. Among my people, she said, such actions carry weight beyond simple gratitude. You have created an obligation, human, one my daughter must now honor, and one this court must now acknowledge. I did not fully understand the implications of her words, though the murmuring around the chamber suggested this announcement carried significant consequences. Velthara stepped forward slightly, addressing her mother directly. Mother, he does not understand our customs fully. Perhaps time should be given to explain everything properly before decisions are made. The Empress studied her daughter for a long moment before nodding slightly. Very well. The human will remain within the palace until matters are settled properly. See that he is treated according to his new status. Before I could ask what that status actually meant, the Empress turned and departed the chamber, leaving behind a court full of curious and suspicious eyes fixed entirely on me. Velthara guided me away from the throne room, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. That went better than I expected, she admitted quietly once we were alone in a corridor. I frowned slightly. What exactly did I just agree to? She hesitated before answering. You have been granted the title of aHFY, she explained. A protector bound by honor to someone within the royal family. It is rare, and it comes with expectations you may not fully understand yet. I felt a growing unease settle in my chest, uncertain of what I had stepped into. What kind of expectations? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed down the corridor, and I turned to see several nobles approaching, their expressions unreadable, clearly intent on testing the outsider who had suddenly become entangled within their court's delicate politics. I had a feeling my troubles were only beginning. The nobles who approached us did not bother with pleasant introductions. Their leader, a tall figure with sharp features and cold eyes, stepped forward while the others remained slightly behind him, watching me the way predators watch something they intend to test before deciding whether it deserves respect. I am Lord Draven, he said, his translator carrying a tone of clear disdain, advisor to the throne, and someone who does not believe an outsider deserves the title now attached to his name. Velthara stiffened beside me, though she said nothing, allowing the confrontation to unfold. I met his gaze evenly, refusing to show the unease building inside me. I did not ask for a title, I told him. I only did what seemed right at the time. Draven studied me for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind his eyes. Perhaps, he said finally, or perhaps you understood exactly what such an action would earn you among people unfamiliar with your species. Humans are known for cunning, are they not? Before I could respond, Velthara stepped forward, her voice firm despite her smaller stature compared to the noble before her. He saved my life without hesitation, Draven. I will not stand here and listen to you question his intentions without cause. Draven's expression shifted slightly, though whether from respect or calculation, I could not tell. Very well, Princess. Then perhaps the human should prove his worth properly, rather than relying solely on your testimony. I did not like the sound of that, though I kept my expression steady. What do you propose? A small, unsettling smile crossed his face. There is a tradition among our warriors, a test of resolve rather than skill, meant to reveal true character under pressure. If you truly possess the courage my people value, you should have no difficulty proving it. Velthara opened her mouth to object, but I placed a hand gently on her arm, stopping her. Whatever this test is, I said calmly, I accept it. Draven's smile widened slightly, though something calculating remained behind his expression. Excellent. Tomorrow, then. The training grounds. At dawn. He turned and departed with his companions, leaving Velthara visibly frustrated. You should not have agreed so quickly, she said once they were gone. Draven has never accepted an outsider gaining influence within this court. Whatever test he has planned will not be simple. I understood her concern, though I also understood something else. If I wanted any chance of navigating this new and complicated world safely, I needed to prove myself according to their standards, not mine. I do not intend to hide from challenges, I told her. Not after everything we have already survived together. She studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly, though worry remained evident in her expression. That night, I barely slept, uncertain of what awaited me at dawn. When morning arrived, I was escorted to a wide open training ground surrounded by tall stone walls, where a small crowd had already gathered, nobles and guards alike, curious to witness whatever Draven had planned. He stood waiting at the center, along with two armored warriors positioned nearby, their weapons resembling long energy blades that hummed faintly with contained power. "The test is simple," Draven announced, loudly enough for the gathered crowd to hear. "You will face these warriors in single combat, unarmed, while they wield training weapons calibrated to cause pain but not lasting harm. Should you last until the signal sounds, you will have proven your resolve." I studied the warriors carefully, noting their stance, their readiness, the confidence in their posture that suggested extensive combat experience I could not hope to match through skill alone. I would need to rely on something else entirely, the endurance and determination that had carried me through worse situations during my years of service back on Earth. The signal sounded, and the first warrior moved immediately, faster than I expected, his weapon sweeping toward me in a controlled arc. I barely managed to avoid the strike, stumbling backward as pain flared along my shoulder where the edge grazed my skin despite my attempt to dodge. The crowd murmured, though whether from surprise or amusement I could not tell. I steadied myself, focusing entirely on survival rather than victory, watching the warrior's movements carefully for any pattern I could exploit. The second warrior joined the assault moments later, forcing me to divide my attention between two skilled opponents simultaneously. I took several more strikes, each one sending sharp pain through my body, though nothing severe enough to disable me entirely. I gritted my teeth, refusing to fall, refusing to give Draven the satisfaction of watching me collapse before this entire court. Minutes passed, though it felt far longer, my body aching from repeated strikes I could not fully avoid. I caught glimpses of Velthara among the crowd, her expression tense with worry, though she remained silent, understanding perhaps that intervening would only weaken whatever respect I might earn through enduring this alone. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a horn sounded, signaling the end of the test. Both warriors stepped back immediately, lowering their weapons, while I remained standing, breathing heavily, bruised but unbroken. Silence fell across the training ground for a long moment before murmurs began spreading through the crowd, this time carrying a different tone than before, something closer to grudging respect. Draven approached slowly, studying me with an expression I could not fully read. "You endured longer than most warriors born within our own ranks," he admitted finally. "Perhaps there is more to you than simple fortune." I did not respond immediately, still catching my breath, though I met his gaze steadily. "I did not do this to impress anyone," I told him. "I did it because I made a choice, and I do not abandon choices simply because they become difficult." Something shifted in his expression, though he said nothing further, merely nodding once, before turning and departing the training ground along with his companions. Velthara rushed toward me the moment the crowd began dispersing, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering worry. "You did not need to prove anything to him," she said, though her voice carried admiration despite her words. "Perhaps not," I admitted, wincing slightly as medical staff arrived to treat my injuries. "But it seems this is how things work here. I would rather earn respect honestly than have it questioned indefinitely." She studied me for a long moment, something warmer entering her expression before she quickly composed herself, glancing around as though suddenly aware of how many eyes remained watching us even now. Over the following days, my standing within the court shifted noticeably. Nobles who once regarded me with open suspicion now offered cautious nods of acknowledgement, though genuine trust remained distant. Velthara and I spent considerable time together during this period, and slowly I began learning more about the political tensions surrounding her family and the mysterious attack that had nearly ended her life. It was during one of these conversations that a guard arrived unexpectedly, informing me that the Empress requested my presence immediately, alone. I followed him through unfamiliar corridors until we reached a private chamber far removed from the grand throne room where our first meeting had taken place. Empress Shaven Shireen sat near a wide window overlooking a vast city stretching endlessly beneath twin moons, her expression thoughtful as I entered. "You wish to see me," I said carefully, uncertain of the proper protocol for such an unexpected private audience. She turned toward me slowly, studying me with the same calculating gaze from our first meeting, though something else lingered beneath it now, genuine curiosity perhaps. "I have heard about the test Draven arranged," she said, "and how you endured it without complaint." "I did not think complaining would have helped my situation," I admitted. A faint smile crossed her lips, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "Humans possess an interesting quality," she continued. "You do not calculate risk the way my people do. You simply act, driven by something other than careful strategy." "I am not sure that is entirely true," I said. "I think about consequences. I simply do not let fear stop me from acting when someone needs help." Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying me with renewed interest. "And if helping someone required sacrificing everything you have, would you still act the same way?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "I already have," I told her. "When I stepped between your daughter and an attack meant to end her life, I did not know if I would survive. I chose to act anyway." The Empress remained silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable, though something behind her eyes seemed to shift, calculating something far beyond our current conversation. "Tell me, human," she said finally. "What do you know of the attack that nearly claimed my daughter's life?" I hesitated, uncertain how much information I actually possessed. "Only what she has shared with me," I admitted, "that the attackers wished to silence her because of something she witnessed." The Empress's expression darkened slightly. "What she witnessed threatens the stability of this entire court," she said quietly. "There are those within my own ranks who would see her silenced permanently, and now, by extension, anyone closely associated with her protection." A chill settled through me as the implications became clear. "You are saying I am now a target as well?" "You have always been one, since the moment you chose to protect her," the Empress replied. "The only question now is whether you possess the strength to remain one step ahead of those who wish you both harm." Before I could respond further, an alarm suddenly echoed through the palace, distant but unmistakable, followed by shouting voices growing louder somewhere beyond the chamber's walls. The Empress rose immediately, her calm demeanor replaced by sharp alertness. "Stay close," she instructed, moving toward the door with surprising speed for someone who had appeared so composed moments earlier. We emerged into a corridor filled with panicked servants and armed guards rushing toward the source of the disturbance. My translator struggled to keep pace with the shouted commands echoing around us, though I understood enough to recognize the words danger and intrusion repeated urgently. We reached the source of the commotion moments later, a section of the palace near Velthara's private quarters, where several guards lay wounded on the floor, unconscious but breathing, while smoke drifted from a damaged section of wall. My heart clenched with fear as I searched frantically for Velthara among the chaos, relief flooding through me the moment I spotted her standing near the damaged wall, shaken but unharmed, though clearly frightened by whatever had just occurred. "Someone attempted to breach my chambers," she explained quickly as we approached, her voice trembling slightly despite her attempt to remain composed. The guards intervened before they could reach me. The Empress's expression turned to something cold and dangerous as she surveyed the damage. "This was no random attack," she said firmly. "This was planned, executed by someone with knowledge of palace security." Guards moved quickly to secure the area, though it became clear the intruders had already escaped, leaving behind little evidence of their identity beyond the damaged wall and unconscious guards who would need time to recover before providing useful information. I stood beside Velthara, my hand resting protectively near hers. though I resisted the urge to hold it entirely given the number of eyes still watching us amid the chaos. Whatever conspiracy threatened her life was far from finished, and now, more clearly than ever, I understood that my own life had become entangled within it permanently. The Empress turned toward me then, her expression calculating once more, though something within it had shifted, decision forming behind her violet eyes. "You will remain close to my daughter from this moment forward," she instructed, "not simply as a guest within this palace, but as her sworn protector, granted full authority to act on her behalf when necessary." I nodded firmly, understanding the weight of what she asked, though accepting it without hesitation. "I will keep her safe," I promised. The Empress studied me for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind her calculating gaze, before she finally turned to address the gathered guards, issuing commands to strengthen security throughout the palace immediately. As the chaos slowly settled into organized response, Velthara turned toward me, her expression grateful despite the fear still lingering in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying, for choosing to remain despite everything you have already learned about the danger surrounding me." I did not hesitate in my response. "I told you before," I said quietly, "I do not abandon choices simply because they become difficult." She held my gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between us, before duty called her attention elsewhere, guards requiring her presence to assess the damage and begin investigating the attempted breach. I remained standing amid the settling chaos, aware that whatever conspiracy threatened this royal family had grown far more dangerous than I initially understood, and that my own involvement had reached a point where retreat was no longer a viable option, even if I had wanted one. Something told me the attack on Velthara's chambers was merely the beginning of a much larger storm building within this court, one that would soon demand far more from me than simple protection alone. The days following the attempted breach passed in a blur of heightened security and quiet tension. Guards doubled their patrols throughout the palace, and every servant, noble, and visitor faced increased scrutiny before being allowed near the royal family's private quarters. I remained close to Velthara during this period, our bond growing stronger through shared danger, though something else had begun forming between us that neither of us openly acknowledged. It was during a private moment in the palace gardens, away from watchful eyes, that Velthara finally spoke about it directly. "You have become more than a protector to me," she admitted quietly, her violet eyes searching mine for some sign of understanding. I do not know how to explain it within terms my people would recognize. I understood the feeling, though I had not allowed myself to fully process it, given everything else demanding my attention. "I feel it too," I admitted honestly. "Whatever this is, it is not something I expected when I first found you in that wreckage." She smiled softly, though worry quickly returned to her expression. "My mother has noticed as well," she said, "and I fear her interest in you extends beyond simple gratitude for your protection." I frowned slightly, uncertain what she meant. "What are you saying?" Before she could elaborate further, a guard approached, informing us that the Empress requested our presence immediately within the throne room. Velthara's expression tightened with sudden apprehension as we made our way through the palace corridors. The throne room was fuller than usual, nobles gathered along both sides of the chamber, their expressions ranging from curious to openly calculating. Empress Shaven Shireen sat upon her throne, her posture regal and composed, though something behind her eyes suggested a decision already made long before our arrival. "You have both served this court well during recent troubles," she began, her voice carrying easily through the silent chamber. "The investigation into the attempted breach has revealed troubling connections within our own ranks, connections that threaten far more than my daughter's safety alone." Velthara stepped forward slightly. "What have you discovered, Mother?" The Empress's expression darkened. "Lord Draven has been implicated in coordinating with outside forces seeking to destabilize this throne. His challenge toward our human guest was never simply about testing worthiness. It was an attempt to eliminate someone who threatened his carefully constructed plans." A murmur spread through the gathered nobles, several exchanging uneasy glances. I felt a chill settle through me, understanding now that the danger surrounding us ran deeper than I had realized. Draven has fled the palace before guards could apprehend him, the Empress continued. He remains at large, along with whatever forces he has aligned himself with beyond our borders. This threat is far from resolved. Velthara's hands clenched slightly at her sides, though she maintained her composed exterior despite the tension evident in her posture. "What do you propose, Mother?" The Empress rose slowly from her throne, descending the steps until she stood before both of us, her gaze shifting between her daughter and myself with calculated precision. "I propose strengthening the bonds that protect this family," she said, "formalizing arrangements that ensure loyalty cannot be questioned and protection cannot be undermined by those seeking to exploit uncertainty within our ranks." I sensed something significant approaching, though I did not yet understand its full weight. "What arrangement do you mean, Empress?" She studied me directly, her violet eyes holding mine with an intensity that made the entire chamber feel smaller somehow. "Among my people," she explained, "when someone demonstrates extraordinary loyalty and courage in service to the crown, tradition allows for a bond far stronger than simple titles. A bond that ties them directly to the royal line itself, ensuring their strength serves this family permanently." Velthara's breath caught audibly beside me, her expression shifting rapidly from confusion to something closer to alarm. "Mother, surely you do not mean—" The Empress raised a hand slightly, silencing her daughter's protest before it could fully form. "I have made my decision," she said firmly. "The human known as Ethan Cole will be bound to this throne, not merely as protector to my daughter, but as consort protector, sworn directly to me." Silence fell across the chamber, heavy and absolute, before nobles began whispering urgently among themselves, clearly stunned by the announcement. I stood frozen, processing words that carried implications I barely understood, though the weight behind them was unmistakable. Velthara turned toward her mother, her voice sharper than I had ever heard it before. "Mother, he does not belong to you to claim. He has protected me, not you." The Empress's expression remained calm, though something firm and immovable settled behind her eyes. "He has protected this entire throne by extension, daughter. His loyalty, his courage, these qualities strengthen this family as a whole, and I intend to ensure they remain bound to us permanently." I finally found my voice amid the growing tension, stepping forward despite the weight of countless eyes fixed upon me. "With respect, Empress," I said carefully, "I have not agreed to any such arrangement." The Empress turned her full attention toward me, something calculating and curious flickering behind her gaze. "You believe you have a choice in this matter, human?" "I believe every person deserves a choice," I answered firmly, refusing to back down despite the pressure building around me. "Whatever bond exists between myself and your daughter, it was formed through my own decisions, not obligation forced upon me by tradition alone." A ripple of surprise passed through the gathered nobles, clearly unaccustomed to witnessing such direct defiance within this chamber. The Empress studied me for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind her calculating expression before, unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth curved into something resembling amusement. "You possess courage I have rarely witnessed among my own warriors," she said finally. "Very well, human. I will not force this bond upon you through decree alone. But know this, the danger surrounding my daughter, and now surrounding you as well, will not simply disappear because you refuse tradition. Draven and his allies will not rest until this threat is eliminated entirely." I understood the underlying warning within her words, the reality that refusing her offer did not remove me from danger. It merely left me without the additional protection and authority such a bond might provide. Velthara stepped closer to me, her expression torn between relief at my defiance and worry about what consequences might follow. "Whatever you decide," she said quietly, "know that I stand beside you regardless of titles or traditions." I appreciated her support, though the weight of the situation remained heavy upon my shoulders. "I need time to think," I told the Empress honestly. "This is not a decision I can make lightly, given everything it seems to involve." The Empress nodded slowly, though her expression remained calculating. "Take the time you require," she said, But do not take too long. Draven's allies grow bolder with each passing day, and this court needs certainty regarding where your loyalty truly lies. The audience ended shortly after, nobles dispersing while whispered conversations continued regarding the unprecedented events that had just unfolded. Velthara guided me away from the throne room, her expression thoughtful as we walked through quieter corridors toward the palace gardens once more. "This is not simply about protection anymore," she admitted once we were alone. "My mother sees something valuable in you, something she wishes to claim for this throne's benefit, regardless of what it might mean for either of us personally." I understood her concern, though something else troubled me even more deeply. "What happens if I refuse entirely?" I asked. "Would that place you in greater danger?" She considered the question carefully before answering. "Possibly," she admitted. "Without the added authority such a bond would provide, protecting me becomes more complicated, especially with Draven's allies still operating beyond our reach." I fell silent, weighing the implications carefully. Whatever decision I made would carry consequences far beyond my own preferences, affecting not only my own future, but potentially Velthara's safety as well. That evening, as I sat alone in the chamber provided for me within the palace, a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to find Velthara standing there, her expression uncertain despite the late hour. "I could not sleep," she admitted, stepping inside once I gestured for her to enter. "There is something I need to tell you, something I should have shared earlier." I gestured for her to sit, settling across from her with growing curiosity. "What is it?" She took a steadying breath before continuing. "The reason Draven and his allies sought to eliminate me was not simply political rivalry," she explained. "I discovered evidence of a plot to overthrow my mother entirely, replacing her with a puppet ruler controlled by outside forces seeking to exploit our resources for their own purposes." I straightened, understanding now the true scale of danger surrounding us. "That is why they attacked your ship," I said, "because you knew too much." She nodded gravely. "And now that you have become entangled within this conflict, protecting me, defying my mother's proposal publicly, you have made yourself a target as significant as I already was." I absorbed this information carefully, understanding now that whatever decision I made regarding the Empress's proposal would need to account for far more than personal preference alone. This was no longer simply about titles or traditions, it involved the stability of an entire civilization and countless lives that depended on preventing Draven's conspiracy from succeeding. "I need to speak with your mother again," I said finally, decision solidifying within me despite lingering uncertainty. "Not tomorrow. Tonight." Velthara studied me carefully, something unreadable passing behind her violet eyes. "Are you certain?" I nodded firmly. "If accepting this bond helps protect you, helps protect this entire throne from the danger Draven represents, then I am prepared to accept it. But not simply as decree forced upon me. I intend to negotiate terms that respect my own voice within this arrangement." A small smile crossed her face, admiration evident despite the tension of our situation. "That sounds like something only a human would insist upon," she said softly. "Perhaps," I admitted, rising from my seat with newfound resolve. "But it is who I am, and I do not intend to change that simply because tradition demands it." We made our way through quiet palace corridors toward the private chambers where the Empress remained awake, guards informing us of her continued presence within her study, despite the late hour. When we arrived, she looked up from documents spread across her desk, her expression carrying mild surprise at our unexpected visit. "You have reached a decision already," she observed, studying my determined expression carefully. "I have," I confirmed, stepping forward despite the weight of the moment. "I will accept the bond you propose, Empress, but not as property to be claimed without voice. I will accept it as an equal partner within whatever this arrangement requires, someone whose loyalty is given freely, not simply demanded through tradition alone." The Empress studied me for a long moment, something shifting behind her calculating gaze, before a slow, genuine smile spread across her features, unlike anything I had witnessed from her before. "I expected nothing less from you, human," she said quietly. "Very well, Let us discuss the terms of this arrangement properly, terms that honor both tradition and the courage you have demonstrated since first arriving within our world. As we settled into careful negotiation late into the night, I understood that whatever came next would reshape my life entirely, binding me permanently to a world I had never expected to call home, and to people whose survival now depended partly upon choices I was only beginning to fully understand. Draven remained out there somewhere, his conspiracy far from finished, and I knew with growing certainty that the true confrontation awaiting us had only just begun. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 days later, enough time for the palace to prepare properly, though every hour that passed felt heavier than the last, knowing Draven remained free somewhere beyond our reach, his allies growing bolder with each passing day. Guards patrolled every corridor with increased vigilance, and the entire palace seemed to hold its breath, waiting for whatever move Draven intended to make next. On the morning of the ceremony, I stood within a private chamber, dressed in formal attire provided by palace tailors, unfamiliar fabric heavy against my shoulders, golden markings stitched carefully along the sleeves to signify the bond I was about to accept. Velthara entered quietly, her own attire equally formal, though her expression carried a mixture of pride and lingering worry. "You look like you belong here already," she said softly, studying the markings along my sleeves. "I appreciate the sentiment," I replied, "though I do not think I will ever fully understand everything this bond requires of me." She smiled gently, though the expression faded quickly as a guard entered, informing us that preparations within the throne room were nearly complete, and that the Empress requested our presence shortly. We walked together through the palace corridors, the weight of the coming ceremony settling heavily upon us both. As we approached the throne room, however, a commotion erupted from somewhere near the palace's outer defenses, distant shouting and the unmistakable sound of energy weapons discharging echoing through the stone corridors. Velthara's expression turned to alarm immediately. "That sounds like an attack." We rushed toward the source of the disturbance, guards scrambling past us toward the outer walls where smoke had begun rising visibly against the morning sky. My translator struggled to keep pace with the urgent commands being shouted across the courtyard, though the meaning became clear enough without translation. Draven had returned, and he had not come alone. Ships descended rapidly from the sky, unmarked vessels bearing the same design as those that had pursued Velthara's escape pod during our very first encounter. Armed figures poured from the landed ships, engaging palace guards in fierce combat across the courtyard, while alarms blared throughout the entire complex. The Empress emerged from the palace moments later, her expression fierce despite the chaos surrounding us, directing guards with calm authority even as explosions rocked nearby structures. "Get my daughter to safety," she commanded firmly, before turning her attention toward organizing the palace's defense. I grabbed Velthara's hand, pulling her toward a more sheltered section of the courtyard, though she resisted slightly, her own instincts urging her to help defend her home, rather than retreat. "We cannot simply hide while others fight for us," she said firmly. I understood her determination, though my priority remained her safety above all else. "We will help," I told her, "but carefully, not recklessly." We moved through the chaos together, avoiding direct combat where possible, while searching for any way to assist the overwhelmed guards. It was during this movement that I spotted Draven himself, standing near the edge of the courtyard, directing his forces with cold precision, his eyes scanning the chaos until they landed directly upon us. He smiled coldly, gesturing toward several nearby soldiers before moving in our direction himself, clearly intent on finishing what his earlier plot had failed to accomplish. Velthara tensed beside me, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon secured at her side, though her injury from the earlier attack still limited her full range of movement. I positioned myself slightly ahead of her, understanding instinctively that whatever confrontation approached, I intended to face it directly rather than allow her to bear the brunt of Draven's anger alone. "You should have accepted defeat gracefully, human," Draven called out as he approached, his soldiers spreading out to surround us. "Your interference has cost me considerable resources, and now, It seems it will cost you far more. I stood firm, refusing to retreat despite the mounting danger. Your conspiracy ends today, Draven, I said firmly. Whatever plans you had for this throne, they will not succeed. He laughed coldly, gesturing for his soldiers to advance. Confidence without power is merely foolishness, human. Let us see how far your courage carries you against real strength. The soldiers moved quickly, and I found myself once again relying on instinct and determination rather than skill alone, dodging strikes while attempting to create enough distance for Velthara to retreat safely. She refused to abandon me entirely, however, using her own limited combat training to assist wherever possible, striking effectively despite her lingering injury. The fighting grew fierce, chaos surrounding us on all sides as palace guards continued battling Draven's remaining forces throughout the courtyard. I took several hits during the exchange, pain flaring across my body, though adrenaline kept me moving, kept me focused entirely on protecting Velthara despite the mounting danger. Draven himself finally moved directly toward us, his expression cold and calculating as he raised a weapon aimed directly at Velthara. I reacted instinctively, throwing myself between them just as he fired, the discharge striking my shoulder with searing pain that nearly dropped me to my knees. Velthara cried out in alarm, catching me before I could fully collapse, her expression a mixture of fear and fierce determination as she turned toward Draven with newfound resolve. "You will not harm him further," she said firmly, raising her own weapon despite her limited mobility. Draven hesitated slightly, clearly unprepared for the intensity of her response, though his expression remained calculating, searching for another opportunity to press his advantage. Before he could act further, however, a commanding voice echoed across the courtyard, cutting through the chaos with unmistakable authority. Enough. The Empress herself approached, flanked by additional guards who had finally managed to secure the surrounding area, her expression carrying cold fury as she regarded Draven directly. "Your conspiracy ends here, Draven. Surrender now, or face the full consequences of your betrayal." Draven glanced around, recognizing the shifting tide as more palace guards arrived, overwhelming his remaining forces despite his earlier confidence. His expression hardened with resignation, though defiance remained evident even as guards moved to restrain him. "This is not finished," he spat, as guards secured him firmly. "Others share my vision. Removing me changes nothing." The Empress regarded him coldly. "Perhaps," she replied, "but you will no longer be here to see it unfold." As guards led Draven away, along with his surviving soldiers, the chaos throughout the courtyard slowly began settling into organized recovery efforts. I remained kneeling, pain radiating from my injured shoulder, though relief flooded through me, knowing Velthara remained safe despite everything that had just occurred. She knelt beside me immediately, her expression a mixture of worry and gratitude as medical staff rushed toward us. "You saved me again," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly despite her attempt at composure. I managed a weak smile despite the pain. "It seems to be becoming something of a habit," I replied. The Empress approached as medical staff began treating my wound, her expression carrying something warmer than I had witnessed before, genuine respect replacing her earlier calculating demeanor entirely. "You fought bravely, human," she said. "Once again, you have proven the depth of your courage beyond simple obligation or tradition." I appreciated her words, though exhaustion and pain made forming a proper response difficult. Velthara remained close beside me throughout treatment, her hand resting gently upon mine as medical staff worked to stabilize my injury. Once treatment concluded and the immediate danger had passed, the Empress addressed the gathered court, many of whom had emerged from shelter to witness the aftermath of the attack. "Draven's betrayal ends today," she announced firmly. "But the courage demonstrated by our human protector reminds us all why unity and loyalty remain essential, regardless of where such qualities originate." The ceremony, delayed by the day's chaos, was rescheduled for the following morning, allowing time for my injury to stabilize properly and for the palace to fully recover from the attack's aftermath. When the morning finally arrived, I stood once again within the grand throne room, this time surrounded by a court that regarded me with genuine respect rather than lingering suspicion. The Empress descended from her throne, addressing the gathered nobles with clear authority. Today, we formalize a bond earned through courage, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty, she announced. Ethan Cole stepped forward. I did as instructed, standing before her with newfound confidence despite the weight of the moment. "Do you accept the responsibilities and protections offered through this bond?" she asked formally, understanding that such acceptance comes with equal voice and equal standing within matters concerning this throne. I understood the significance of her final words, recognizing the negotiation we had reached during our private discussion days earlier, ensuring this bond represented partnership rather than mere obligation. "I accept," I answered firmly. The Empress smiled, something genuine and warm replacing her earlier calculating expression entirely. "Then let it be known throughout this court and beyond," she announced, "that Ethan Cole is bound to this throne as consort protector, sworn not through conquest or decree alone, but through mutual respect and shared purpose." The court erupted into applause, nobles who had once regarded me with suspicion now offering genuine acknowledgement of the bond being formalized before them. Velthara stood nearby, her expression carrying pride and quiet joy despite the earlier complications surrounding this arrangement. As the ceremony concluded and the court slowly dispersed into celebration, Velthara approached me quietly, her expression thoughtful. "This changes things between us," she said softly, though perhaps not in ways either of us originally expected. I considered her words carefully, understanding that whatever bond now existed between myself and the Empress did not diminish the connection Velthara and I had built together, through shared danger and mutual respect. "This is new territory for all of us," I admitted, "but I do not regret the choices that brought me here." She smiled genuinely, relief evident despite lingering complexity surrounding our situation. "Then perhaps we will navigate this new territory together," she said. Later that evening, as celebrations continued throughout the palace, I found myself standing alone on a balcony overlooking the vast city beneath twin moons, reflecting on everything that had unfolded since that fateful night my ship first crashed into unknown wreckage. I had arrived here as a simple freight pilot, uncertain and out of place, drawn into a conflict far beyond anything I had ever imagined. Now, standing here as consort protector to an empire spanning countless star systems, I understood that whatever challenges remained ahead, whatever conspiracies Draven's allies might still pursue, I no longer faced them alone. I had found purpose here, a strange new home among people who valued courage and loyalty above all else, and a bond with both mother and daughter that defied simple explanation. The Empress joined me on the balcony moments later, her expression calm despite the day's earlier chaos. "You have brought something valuable to this court," she said quietly. "Something beyond simple strength." "What is that?" I asked. She considered the question thoughtfully before answering. "Hope," she said finally. "Hope that loyalty and courage still matter, even in a universe filled with betrayal and calculated ambition." I stood beside her in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker beneath the twin moons, understanding that my journey through the stars had only truly begun. Whatever challenges awaited beyond this moment, I intended to face them the same way I always had, without hesitation, without calculation, simply because it was right. And somewhere out there, among the stars I had never expected to call home, I had finally found a purpose worth protecting with everything I had.